How does one differentiate between understanding and experiencing knowledge from a relative point of view? What does it take to go from understanding to experiencing? Does confluence of mind and intellect relate to the stages of gaining knowledge, and if so, in what way? So we're using the phrase understanding knowledge versus experiencing knowledge. So that's what we've at other times called the distinction between understanding and wisdom. So wisdom is what we mean by experiencing knowledge. So you can think of wisdom as your set of existing beliefs. So what does this mean? It means that wisdom itself must be relative. You take the center point here in this spectrum of wisdom. From a lower point, that set of beliefs would be called wisdom. But from a higher perspective, that same central point would be called ignorance. So what's a simple example of this? You might say that the way to gain a sense of well-being in life is to overcome the competition. You develop a sense of competence, you develop a sense of being better than others, you develop a sense of identity around what you're good at, there's a sense of achievement. So to an extent that's correct. But it has a limitation to it. It's true, but only to a specific degree. It's more true to say that satisfaction can be gained by connecting myself to others in a way that is sharing, unselfish, collaborative. So from the perspective of that earlier set of beliefs, this new one is wisdom. And if indeed it is wisdom, what it means is that because your beliefs are more in line with reality, you will actually have a greater sense of well-being. But there is yet another set of beliefs which is even more true, which will deliver a greater sense of well-being, and from the perspective of which the unselfish attitude now looks like ignorance. What could that be? I am not my unselfish urges. I am not my unselfish desires. Because it implies separateness. If I want good for you, the implication is that we are all separate. Higher knowledge than that is to say that we're not separate at all. So, when we talk about experiencing knowledge, we're talking about wisdom. We're talking about having an upgraded set of beliefs, ones that more accurately reflect reality. So what we need to understand about wisdom is that it naturally acts from that belief. This is the way that we can begin to differentiate understanding from wisdom. So for example, if I knew with wisdom that unselfishness is my obligation, is the path to happiness, then I would not harm others to gain for my ego. If I knew with wisdom that unselfishness is my obligation and the way to satisfaction, then I would share what I have. This is how we can begin to discriminate it within ourselves. If I find myself acting in ways that are not aligned to certain beliefs that I have, then I don't yet have it as true wisdom. Although I claim to believe it, and a part of me actually does believe it, I haven't yet got it as the experience of that knowledge. It's not yet wisdom. Actions don't naturally flow from that. So what that means is that if we have to manage thoughts, impulses, desires, then we don't yet have wisdom. The very fact that we are in reflection on what we should or shouldn't do means that I don't have the wisdom yet. To say, I know that I should not smoke and drink as much as I do. I'm faced with an opportunity to, say, consume alcohol. If I have to say, should I, shouldn't I, my health goals are this, etc., etc., I'm going to say no thank you. The very fact that I'm in conversation with myself over what to do indicates that it's not wisdom, because wisdom naturally flows. If it was wisdom, then when the alcohol comes into my field of experience, it's a natural and easy thing for me to say no thank you. So we are always acting from our existing level of wisdom. We may not be able to articulate what we have as wisdom. That can come if we delve into ourselves. But just because we have a level of wisdom doesn't mean that we have a cognitive understanding or the ability to articulate it. So when we're looking at going from this understanding of knowledge to the experience of knowledge, we can look at these 4 stages. And so we're going from lower wisdom to higher wisdom along that spectrum. And let's use that same example. I can gain satisfaction and a sense of self by beating the competition at everything I do. Let's say that higher wisdom is to say that a sense of self and a sense of satisfaction comes from an unselfish, collaborative attitude. Unconscious incompetence is where we start. So I'm functioning from this lower level of wisdom and I don't know it. So then what happens? The limitations of that set of beliefs start to become apparent to me. At this point, I don't know what the problem is. All I know is that I'm just not as happy as I thought I would be. There's something missing. I'm agitated. My relationships are poor. There's something wrong. Where's it coming from? And a helpful person points out, well, it's because you get into conflict with everybody. You've got to be the smartest. You've got to be the strongest. You've got to prove yourself better than everybody else all the time. It's very tiring to be around. What's happened? I'm still functioning from that set of beliefs that I've got to beat the competition, but now I'm aware of it. I've become conscious of my way of functioning. There may be a resistance to change. Okay, so I'm conscious of it and incompetent in the sense that I'm still stuck in my lower wisdom. Then what happens? As I reflect a bit more, I start to say, well, maybe there is a new way to look at things. Maybe collaboration and sharing is an attitude I should begin to adopt. So now I can get into conscious competence. I am practicing self-control. I'm consciously choosing to operate from this higher set of beliefs. So I'm gradually moving towards what we can call unconscious competence. So what that means is it's naturally flowing out of me. There is this higher wisdom. I'm in the blue now. I'm not having to put effort to act from a place of sharing, community, collaboration. It's who and what I am. So what does it take to go from understanding to experiencing? So essentially what we're doing is we are creating and consolidating and integrating a new set of beliefs. How do we get there? Beliefs are the result of reflection. The process is, of course, completely tied up with our own experiences. We have past experiences, and from those past experiences we derive what we think this whole life thing is all about. So where did I get the belief that I have to beat the competition? Well, perhaps that was the only time that I got praise. The only time that I got recognition or attention was when I beat others at something. So that's what I learned. I've developed this belief. What I want to do is to create and consolidate a new one. So reflection happens naturally for us when we have experiences. We derive understandings. If we want to choose to go to a higher level of knowledge or higher level of wisdom, then we begin to question our old beliefs. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you've got to find them. What am I experiencing in my life and why? What behaviors have led to those? What's driven those behaviors? What are the desires and the fears that are driving those behaviors? What must I think is true in order for me to desire that thing? So you're tracing back to underlying beliefs, and then you are challenging them, questioning them. The way to gain satisfaction is to beat the competition. Well, is that true? Well, it's not 100% false, but it's got a real serious limitation to it. What are the causes of this attitude that I have? What are the effects of it? Well, the effects are that I isolate myself from others and come across as a bit of a bully, etc. Do the same thing with a new set of beliefs. Unselfishness is the way to a greater identity and a greater sense of well-being. Challenge it. On what basis? What would be the cause of that kind of attitude? What would be the effect of it? Is there any evidence that it's true? So as you reflect continuously in this way, you will start to see the truth for yourself. And when you see the truth, there's that aha moment. The light bulb goes off and you see it for what it is. Another way that we can go from understanding to experiencing is to integrate that belief as action. So what we're doing is acting as if we did believe it. I'm not sure about this whole sharing thing, but if I did believe it to be true, how would I act in this situation when me and my partner are having an argument? Well, the old belief would be, I've got to be right. The new belief would be sharing. Sharing what? Sharing being right? What does that mean? Saying to the other person, yeah, you're right from your perspective. I can see where you're coming from. That's how you can integrate it. You have an opportunity to shine at your workplace. Now, you can take it all for yourself, or you can bring others in with you and say, this is the team that created this project. You are sharing the limelight. So you can find ways to act from that belief. Now, you're not faking it. You're not suppressing your urges, your desires to beat the competition, because remember, they are still there, along with the underlying beliefs. What you're doing is experimenting, being curious. So you're entering an imaginative space where, okay, let's pretend that it is true. And so you go into it with that attitude of experimentation and curiosity. Does confluence of mind and intellect relate to the stages of gaining wisdom? If so, in what way? When we practice reflection, it is a confluence of mind and intellect. That's what it is. The intellect is trying to comprehend something, and what you're doing is bringing the mind along with it. What does it feel like when I consider this possibility? That sharing is better than beating the competition. You're not just thinking about the cognitive side of it, the meaning side of it. You're also bringing the mind, the feeling side with it. So in fact, you're entering into the imaginative space where for that moment it actually is true for you. And the more you stay in that space, the more it becomes your reality. Same thing when we integrate it as an action. It's an authentic sense of believing it. You're not forcing yourself to act in a way that you don't want to. It makes sense to me. I can see how it works. I've seen evidence around me, so let me try it. That's the intellect. There's some faith in this idea. It seems like it could be true. And I would like to be in that direction. There's the mind coming along. It's your feelings. So you can see how the mind and intellect are both engaged here. They're both moving in the same direction. You know it and you feel it.